Yes, it is on. Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon to the Minister, to members from the Eskom executive team, to colleagues and to members of the media. Let me thank you very much for honoring our invitation, albeit at a very short notice. Thank you very much for making it to this media briefing, which is led by the Minister in the Presidency responsible for electricity. He felt that he should take the media and, by extension, the nation into confidence into our current stages of load shedding and the performance of our national grid. I will not waste any more time, and I will just invite the Minister to come to the podium to commence with the briefing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, TK, and once more, good afternoon to everyone. And thank you very much to members of the media for making it to this briefing at a very short notice, because I think you are an important conduit through which you are able to communicate this message. And like I said previously, is that Stage 6 load shedding is an extraordinary event. I mean, load shedding by definition, it's an unwelcome event, and it's something that we should frown upon, and that's why the President has taken significant steps to ensure that we have a focused attention and an intervention, of course, guided by the Energy Action Plan for us to be able to resolve the challenges of load shedding. The Minister of Finance just the other day, when he delivered the medium-term budget policy statement, he did indicate the weight that load shedding is having on the South African economy and is stunting the growth of the country, economic growth of the country. I have said on previous occasions that although we do have our scheduled regular updates, I've made the commitment that if we were to reach Stage 6, I'll make it my business to ensure that we have an opportunity immediately for us to be able to share with the country the state of the grid, because I think it's important that we are able to habituate this exercise for the reasons that I've mentioned earlier on, that Stage 6 is a completely unwelcome and extraordinary event and undermines significantly in the most acute fashion the challenges that we are having on the economy front and just disrupting people's daily experiences. Any stage of load shedding does that, but it becomes more pronounced when we get to Stage 6. And also the second point to be made that although I've committed to this exercise of when we get to Stage 6, we get to share with you almost immediately what the situation is. We will not normalize load shedding. So as a point I'm making, it doesn't necessarily follow that when we're Stage 1, Stage 2, then everything is normal. The country deserves no explanation. But we have agreed that in that context, we'll use the opportunity of our weekly update for me to be able to take you through what the situation is. Of course, this week, starting about 2 weeks ago, I did mention the fact that I'll be visiting the various power stations as part of a follow-up visit that I had the last time. And the first visit that I had two primary intentions. The first one, of course, was as a freshly minted Minister of Electricity, was to share the vision, of course, get to introduce myself rather to the workers at Eskom, the various stakeholders, management, organized labor, and just general employees, and also just to articulate how the Energy Action Plan works and also the contribution of Eskom to the resolution of the energy crisis in the country. And of course, the second objective was to get an appreciation and appraisal from management in relation to the actions that they are taking at the various stations, and also to ask the question, what is it that the Minister of Electricity can assist in relation to some of those action plans, in addition to the work that the board is doing, what the CEO is doing, the executive management, the head of generation, Mr. Ngumalo, so they've got a defined responsibility, but to the extent that it requires the executive authority, those are the questions that were asked, and how best can we work together to be able to address those issues. Of course, having come out of that exercise, we put together a consolidated report in relation to the performance of the various power stations and made recommendations on the back of that consolidated report to Cabinet. And some of those recommendations, which were thoroughgoing, included amongst other things, the delayed decommissioning of the power stations, some of the power stations that were earmarked to be closed almost immediately, and the period leading to 2030. Now I've embarked on a second round of those visits. I've visited Arnott, and most recently I was at Letabo. And I think what hit us when we were at Letabo was that 2 units went off. Unit number 4 and unit number 5 went off when we were at Letabo, but those units have since been returned to service. But what is particularly telling is the fact that that unit 4 at Letabo had gone out on the back of a boiler tube leak. I'm making this point because the week preceding this is that we had some of our major units going out as a result of what we call boiler tube leaks, and that included Medupi. And on the back of those, the cluster of units that had gone out, as I shared with you in our last briefing, what it meant is that we had to engage significantly our emergency reserves. And just to put it into context, our emergency reserves really, from a pump storage point of view, we have about 2,300 megawatts. So that's available pump storage. And then for the open cycle gas turbines collectively, that's 1,332. And like I said, these are the reserves. The one we use water is a function of the dam levels, the degree to which we are able to deploy. And the other one is a function of diesel that is available on site and storage so that we are able to deploy. Now, as a result of us having an experience of a significant amount of megawatts that had gone out, that cluster of units that had gone out in the preceding week, which included some of our big units, because it doesn't necessarily follow that the absolute number of units going out gives you a significant loss on the megawatts. The biggest measure really is the amount of megawatts that you have lost as a result of the units going out. And what leaves those megawatts that have gone out is a function of the size of the units that have gone out. And I'd made the point that in that instance, we had 2 units at Medupi having gone out. Of course, I'm happy to indicate that Unit 5 returned on the 23rd of November. That is Medupi Unit 5, and then Unit 2, again, boiler tube leak failure, including header failure, returned 7 days after. So it was a 7 days outage. And then it returned this week on Wednesday. And I've made the point that we had now lost Unit 4 and Unit 5, but they've returned on the 21st. Unit 4 at Letabo and Unit 5 at Letabo, they've returned on the 21st, respectively. We have lost a few units, but those don't explain, if you like, the initiation of Stage 6. So what is the initiation of Stage 6, where we are today? So if you had to look at our numbers, the UCLF, the unplanned capacity loss factor, we are sitting at about 14,590 megawatts, and the vacuum losses is about 807 megawatts. So if you put it together, we are talking about 15,300 megawatts. So that's not out of the norm. In relation to, if you look at the winter plan, we should not be, especially on a day like Friday, where we're expecting that demand is going to taper down. We don't expect the initiation of the intensified stages of load shedding, like is the case now, where we are at Stage 6. So that's not explained by the unplanned capacity loss factor. So it's not out of the range, it's not out of the norm. What explains this? What explains this is the fact that we had overcommitted our reserves. So for purposes of protecting the grid, we need to ensure that we continue to protect the reserves. So we're not going to engage them at a heightened intensity. And as a result, you don't have the benefit of that 4,600 megawatts that will ordinarily draw from our emergency reserves. Remember, it's a 2,300 of pump storage, and there's also the open cycle gas turbine of about 1,332. Of course, so you don't have that benefit. And as a result of that, it calls for the intensification of the load shedding. So what is So that's the explanation of where we are for purposes of protecting the grid. So 2 interventions we'll make. And of course, Eskom has already announced that we plan that if you look at the cycle, the interventions we want to make, we should be back to a situation that is relatively acceptable. Relative, in inverted commas, I made the point when I started that load shedding is unacceptable. So that is beyond the question. So I'm talking of significantly lower stages of load shedding. 2 interventions will be made. The first one, as a result of us not engaging the reserves, it means we are going to be replenishing those reserves. And as many of you will know, with regards to pump storage, when we replenish, we are going to draw from the grid, and that's why we need that additional capacity, and that's why that capacity is not being made available to the average consumer. Is for Eskom to consume it for purposes of replenishing the dam levels. And then with regards to the open cycle gas turbines, we'll be running them at almost half of this 1,332. It gives us the opportunity for us to replenish our OCGT gas turbines. So that's the opportunity we think we'll use between now and Sunday. And then we're also going to ensure that we accelerate the return of the units that have gone out. And I'll invite Becky, just as I conclude, just to take you through which are those units that has gone out. But what's the biggest message I'm conveying is that the 4,590 UCLF plus 807, which is 15,500 total losses. If you look at what has been the average, there were instances where we're doing much worse than this during the week, not a Friday, but we're able to maintain, if you like, stage 2 and 3 and stage 4 at the west. So it's not explained by the UCLF, it's explained by the fact that as a result of us having engaged these emergency reserves, we're depleting them. And you know, the emergency reserves, they perform a very important function, is a protection of the grid. If everything were to go bad, we know we'll draw from these emergency reserves. So you want at any given point an opportunity for you to be able to call on to the emergency reserves in instances of extreme occurrences which we have not experienced and we don't anticipate to experience. 2 interventions, like I said, the replenishment of the emergency reserves. The second one, the return of those units. And I really want to make the point that, of course, we want to apologize most sincerely. I make the point all the time. When we get to these levels of intensity, the amount and the levels of disruptions to businesses and also just ordinary people, it's extreme. Load shedding does disrupt. This is extreme, and that's why I want to convey that apology. But we continue to work with the team at Eskom to ensure that we improve the situation. I must say that this is a significant setback, but like I say all the time when I provide a briefing every week and sometime bi-weekly, is that we're measuring the trend line. The trend line still looks positive, and we intend to keep it at that. And also my visits at the various power stations illustrate the fact that the trend lines in some of these power stations continues to be up. And of course, we remain confident about the ability of us to resolve load shedding. Of course, we don't discount a situation where in the future you're going to run into a similar problem. But we think that in the next 2 weeks we'll have an additional buffer. What is that additional buffer? We are expecting that Unit 2 of Kusile to come online by end of this month. We expect Unit 5 at Kusile to come by mid-December. Should be coming, 3rd week of December should be coming online. I'm making that point because the more additional megawatts we add onto the grid, especially coming from the big units like Kusile, the 2 should give you their design capacities, 1,600 megawatts, means that even if you were to have a situation of a cluster of units failing, you have significant amount of play. So the degree to which you are able to intensify load shedding will not approximate the levels that we are experiencing now. And that's the point I'm making, is that when I say you have turned the corner, is because we are adding significant amount of megawatts. And of course, these are engineering units. They are prone to failure. It's an inherent risk. They will fail at times. But that's not the excuse. What we have is that the benefit is that the more we add the megawatts, the better our opportunity to be able to address the situation and not get to a situation where we are faced with the intensification of load shedding to proportions of stage 6 as we are experiencing today. I'm going to invite Mr. Nxumalo just to add on some of the units and the interventions we are making, and then we'll take the questions. Thanks, Epic.
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon, members of the media. I think just to add one point that from what the Minister was saying, to say at 15 and a half, we shouldn't be at stage 6 as well. And then apart from the reserves, in addition, what we have noticed today, the demand just went up, is above, compared to yesterday, is continuously above by 1,500. So that 1,500 plus the reserve that were low. So that is really what caused us to be above this. Because if I look at the units that we have lost today, Minister did talk to Medupi 5. That unit had a duplicate since returned. So between yesterday and today, the only unit that came down was the Dova unit 4, Majuba 3, and Letabo unit 6. So that's why then I concur with the Minister that where we are with the total losses, it shouldn't have resulted into where we are, into this stage 6 of load shedding. It is 1,600, 1,500 above the demand today, the whole day, and then also plus this replenishment, especially at Drakensberg and Ingula, and then also Horikwa, we still have reserves. But at Ankalech, we don't have the whole 1,300 at Ankalech. That's why we are also had to cap that to recover those reserves as well. Yeah, thanks, Minister.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you very much to Bheki as well. We've now come to the question session. We'll open the floor to questions from members of the media. We will start with those who are in the room, and we will then follow with the questions that have been shared by members of the media online. Any hands? Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Minister and Mr. Kgosientsho. It's Antoinette Slavitti from Rapport. I have a few questions. The first is about the diesel, the availability of diesel for the OCGTs. Do I understand correctly that it is being shipped in through Cape Town, and I would like to know how, if that is so, how it impacts the congestion in the harbour, how that impacts the availability of diesel for the OCGTs. Then about the energy availability factor, Mr. Andre de Ruyter, when he was at Eskom, said to expect better performance from the Eskom power station, it's like flogging a dead horse. I believe National Treasury commissioned a report about the possibility of improving the performance of the power station. Where is that report? When will it be made available? I believe it's been locked away. I'm almost done. Just another question. Minister, how much new capacity, generation capacity, has government procured this year? And what powers does the Minister of Electricity have to expedite that? And then just the last one, you say the trend is moving upwards, but the EAF average for this year, the weekly average EAF is now standing at 54.83%, whereas the average for last year was 58%. It's trending downwards, so I don't know, maybe you can explain what you base that contention on. Thank you.
Thank you, Antoinette. Any other questions in the room?
Puleli Treaty Jones, ENCA. Minister, you speak about that in the next 2 weeks we will have additional Bava Unit 2 and 5 in Kgosientsho. Are you still positive that South Africans will have a festive season whereby we have lights and we won't be in the dark? Because we know that you can recover one unit and the next one will fail again as a result of technical issues of maintenance or whatever it may be. Are you ruling out the possibility of sabotage as well here at play? Because I think many people are failing why there would be so much demand when there's a heat wave and we're experiencing the summer season rather than in winter as well compared to winter. Also, when it comes to the reserves as well, what explains this? Is the grid protected? Do we run a risk of running out of reserves and seeing the grid collapsing as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Pule. Any questions in the room before we go to Ishmael for questions that have been shared online? Ishmael?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, the first question is from Kgosientsho EE Business Intelligence. Minister, is there any good reason why the Eskom weekly system status report for week 47, 2023 is still not published on the Eskom website yet? And please recap. Minister Ramokgopa said UCLF is 14,590 megawatt. Bekitumelo said 15,500 megawatt, which is correct. The next question, Hello Prios Independent Media. How many hours can the OCGTs and pumped storage projects provide today? What was the reason for the 1,500 megawatt spike in demand? And what about the demand curtailment for energy intensive users such as Hillside Aluminium Smelter? The next question, Lamis Omarji, News 24. For clarity, is the reason reserves are running low because Eskom has been relying on these stations more over the summer month to support plant maintenance? The next question, that's all for now, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ishmael and colleagues. We'll start with okay, there's one more question from...
Sorry, I just wanted to sneak in something there. Minister, it seems as though stage 6 took everyone by surprise, even you. How does that happen? And secondly, you have reiterated throughout the year, yourself, the President, the SG of the ANC, that come December we will not be experiencing load shedding, or promise that load shedding will be done with. Would you say you failed to reach the objectives of taking South Africans to the confidence that we will not be experiencing indefinite load shedding by December this year? Thank you.
Thank you, Pule. The Minister will answer to that shortly. We'll start with Lady Nomad.
Thank you very much for those questions. Antoinette, the OCGT diesel supply at Cape Town, we have not been impacted by this congestion. I think it's more just the logistics, because Uncle F is just more the tracking system that impact on Uncle F. So the congestion has not affected us. You talked about the EAF current year to date is 55.2. Then obviously for the month, you're correct with that 54. I think it's a function of the two things. If you look at, because remember the EAF takes unavailability plus also the plant. With an increase in plant now because we are on the summer season, so the PCLF or sometimes this week, like currently right now is at 5.8. as well, so that, but if you look at the total UCLF, maybe also to to correct what Chris was saying as well. The minister, he quoted two numbers. He quoted 14 and a half, and then he quoted, he said, plus 807. So our numbers are correct, Chris. The actual UCLF, the minister is quoted, because mine, I put that to what we call the external factors, like the minister said, it was things like vacuum at Matimba. So the numbers are actually correct here. And then the point that was raised, I think, playing about the Kusile units, I think if you look at the Kusile both unit 1 and 2, since they have returned, they've both been running extremely well, above 90% availability. So that's what we are expecting as well when unit 4 return, unit 3 return in the next week. So that helps as well, because when you get those units, they create stability now. Remember I said that we are also taking lessons from Medupi to make sure that whatever we have learned at Medupi, we transferred it to Kusile. So we are seeing those signs now since unit 1 and 3 have returned. So we are seeing, so as this unit comes in, they give us that buffer as well. I think the minister will talk to the NT and the capacity. The issue of the 1,500 spike that was Ike is something that I'm sure that as you were driving, you've seen how intensity of heat is now. I think because we did check with our colleagues from the system operator, the issue you think that it is coming more from the air conditioning loading as well. That's what is creating that 1,500. But I'm sure we can look at it, but that is the feedback I got from the system operator colleagues as well. And then, in terms of we have relied on the plant maintenance, on the reserve to do the plant maintenance. No, I think the reserve, we use them as they, but what has happened, the minister also highlighted the fact that in the past 2 weeks, we have experienced a higher number of choke leaks. Like at Medupi, for an example, we had 2 units in the past week, between last week and this week, that had the choke leaks as well. Then those are the big units that took 1,600 out from our generated capacity. And then also at Letabo, so because of those issues, they would need to run the reserve a bit, but it has nothing to do with the planned maintenance, because the planned maintenance take all these factors into account. But the point we are making is that if you look at the total UCLF, that 15.6 is not something that ordinarily, especially on a Friday, would have resulted us to go to stage 6. Is this higher than expected demand now of 1,500 plus the reserve that are low? Yeah, thanks, Minister.
Thank you very much, Becky, for that. Maybe just to go to Antoinette. So she makes an important observation to say that the EAF to date, I think she says it averages about 54% or so. Compared to last year, it's worse off. And I think that is in relation to the point that I made earlier on, that the trend line is going up. So there are a number of things that you have not factored into. The EAF of last year had the benefit of Unit 1 of Kusile. So you know that in December, we took out the Unit 1 of Kusile. So 900 of Quebec, I'm very sorry. Thanks, Becky and Daphne. So you took out 980 megawatt. So the EAF of that year will also have taken into account the fact that until October you had the benefit of Unit 1, 2, 3 of Kusile. So if you like 2,400 megawatts. Those 2,400 megawatts, we've only retrieved just now Unit 1 and Unit 3. I just made the point that Unit 4 is going to come. So essentially, there's 3,100 megawatts that we didn't have the benefit of for the most of the year. And that's why I'm saying the trend line goes up. If you had to take those, make an assumption, you plug them into the available capacity, you will see that it's exceptionally better. So that's the point I want to make the trend line continues to go up. And then on the issue of the report that Antoinette refers to is the VGB, that report was commissioned by National Treasury, trying to understand how best we can improve the performance of the units. And of course, at the right time, National Treasury will, as a custodian and a body that had commissioned the units, they are the ones who will determine how it goes out. But internally, those conversations have happened. And then also on the powers that the minister has. So you know that I have powers in terms of determination of a new generation capacity. And in fact, I'll be exercising that very soon. But I think the primary focus now was to work with Eskom, in addition to working with other private sector players on the generation side, to ensure that we create conditions that make it possible for us to be able to connect new generation capacity. And of course, we'll make those determinations as we proceed. I will not go into the public domain as a public figure entrusted with the responsibility of communicating government position and articulate or make claims that I can't substantiate. So I can't stand here and cry sabotage. I have no reason to make that statement. I'm not about to make that statement. We're in this situation. We have determined what the issues are. We are attending to those issues, and my obligation is to ensure that we keep to our mandate, to ensure that we are able to resolve this challenge going into the future. And then on the issues around whether this took us by surprise, we make the point, myself and Mr. Ngumalo, that it's an extraordinary occurrence that we have a sharp increase of 1,500 additional megawatts demand placed on the grid. And how do you arrive at that statement is a function of the historical trend, and also is a function of the period of the year. So we never expected that you'll have a situation of an additional 1,500 megawatts. But we continue to make the point that it is important that we are addressing the issues of the units that are out, so that we get to ensure that we, even if there are unexpected spikes, there's significant buffer, what Mr. Ngumalo refers to, the introduction of greater levels of stability. And the point he makes about Unit 2 and 5 are important. And then on the issues in relation to our quest to resolve load shedding, I repeat the statement. When we go into the period, as we go forward, these units coming back, Unit 2 and 3, Unit 2 and 5 at Kusile, the improvements that Mr. Ngumalo has been making, you can see that the consistent positive trend line, you'll see significantly reduced levels of load shedding. So I'm repeating that statement. We'll repeat significantly lower stages of load shedding. And I also want to say that it will not be uncommon that for days, some days during the December period, that you will not have load shedding as a result of the fact that your intensive energy users will not, some of them would have closed. Of course, as Mr. Ngumalo has indicated, we are going to ramp up plant maintenance. So the intensity of load shedding, I make the point, on average is going to go significantly lower as we continue to see these improvements. As Mr. Ngumalo has indicated, I mean, if you look at the units that have returned, Unit 1 and 3 at Kusile, he makes the point that their performance is consistent above 80%. So we do expect that as we return that Unit 2, as we return that Unit 5, we are likely going to see that trend if Unit 1 and 3 is anything to go by, and also the kind of improvements that we have been making. So I repeat what I've been saying myself in publicly. We are going to see significantly lower stages of load shedding for a multiplicity of reasons, the issues on the demand side. But the point that I make consistently, and I don't want to miss that opportunity now, is that even if we are to see significant period of less load shedding and or in some days a consistent number of days without load shedding, this situation has not gone. We have not resolved the problem. And like I said, the biggest problem, the biggest opportunity we have, or the way to resolve this, in addition to the work that Mr. Ngumalo, as the head of generation, is doing, of course, assisted by the board and the collective of the men and women at Eskom, is to ensure that we get new generation capacity. And that new generation capacity will be enabled by our ability to ensure that we are able to roll out and strengthen transmission. So that's the most enduring solution to this problem. There's so much that they can do. They can reach that EAF as the target is for next year of 65 and get to 70, but for as long as there's no additional generation capacity, the burden on Eskom will be too much to be able to address this situation. Of course, for now it's important because the shortest possible way of addressing this situation is to ensure that the dominant player, that is Eskom, gets to perform, and the team is doing all that they can to ensure that we're able to improve this performance going into the future. Thanks, TK.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you to Bheki Ngumalo as well. Colleagues, we'll take the last round of questions. Again, starting with questions in the room. Do we have follow-up questions in the room? And then we'll conclude with questions from Ishmael. Yes, Antoinette?
Minister, I don't think you answered my questions about how many megawatts the government has procured this year. And I'm not sure whether I understood you correctly. Did you say that you're getting the powers to do the procurement or the determination? When will that be? Thank you.
Thank you, Antoinette. Any other questions in the room? Ishmael, do you have questions, follow-up questions online?
Yes, Chairperson. The first one, Siphelele Tlutla, business report. Can the Minister explain how much megawatts are being contributed to the grid by renewables currently? And what has been the impact of the synchronization of Unit 1 of Ubek Nuclear Power Station? Next questions, Terence Kremer, Engineering News. What has underpinned the increase in demand? Is it the heat wave? When will the EAP focus shift decisively from fixing Eskom to adding new generation capacity, given that the narrow focus on recovering the coal fleet is continually failing short in tackling load shedding, and this appears to be a high-risk strategy? A follow-up from Ms. Omaji, News 24. What are the current level of reserves, diesel and dam levels? Another follow-up from Chris Yellen. What is the impact of the hot weather on partial load losses? What is the level of partial load losses? And we have Jan Dilange report. Does the loss of units at established power stations such as Majuba and Tutuka an indication that the maintenance backlog is too large to maintain a stable grid? That's all. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. That's the last round of questions. So if there are any more in the room, please feel free. Otherwise, we will now hand over to Bheki, who will be followed by the Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Tsakani. I think the point from Siphelele about the renewables and what is currently onto the grid, if you look at the solar load as I was coming here, it was about 1,000 megawatt. And then we also had the wind, it was around about 1,200 as well. And then the increase in demand, yes, that's what I was indicating, that the increase in demand today, I think it can be attributed to the heat wave that we are experiencing, because if we suspect that is coming from the air conditioning, so it would come from that that space. Obviously, the impact, I think, is Chris, the impact of the hot conditions on the partials. It will. That's why we will also see that the stations like Matimba, when it's so hot, because then you have vacuums as well. So the current partial is standing at about 7,000 megawatts as well. So there will be some impact from these high temperatures, but the main impact as well is experienced at Matimba. And then obviously some of the stations, if you're picking up the issues on the condensers, but the bigger impact is at Matimba. And then I think the issue about the losses of the units at Majuba and Letabo and those stations and Tutuga as indications of the maintenance backlog. I think if you look at especially the leaks that come from the boiler tube leaks, like you would see at Majuba, the unit they go through the cycle. I think it's not really that to say it's because of the maintenance backlog. Because even when you are having the boiler to work on it, you can't work on possibly every boiler tube that you have there. We've got areas that have been mapped that are prone to high erosions or things like that. Those are the areas that you would normally focus on, but you will always have this time to time the tube leaks happening. The only problem is when you find that you've got the tube leaks at Matimba, at Medupi, and 2 at Letabo, and 2 at Majuba, all of them happening at the same time. That's where we pick up the bigger risk. But if everything was stable, the temperatures was not as high as it is, and the demand wouldn't be that high, those are part of the things that get factored in as we are planning. But yeah, when you get the number of boiler failures happening at the same time, that's where you will pick up the Minister will leave that to the new capacity. I think you can pick that one up. I think I've covered everything.
Thank you very much, Becky. Antoinette, thank you once more for the question. No, I'm talking about the determination of new generation capacity. So that's the powers that I have. The issues of procurement, that section is still sitting with the DMRE, and of course it is procured through the IPP office. So that's the point. And in relation to how many megawatts, of course, that government has procured. Remember that the government procurement program is done through those bid windows. So the last bid window number 6, there was about 2,000 megawatts that was not allocated as a result of issues of grid capacity. And I think only 1,000 megawatts. But it doesn't necessarily mean that those are on load. I think if you look at the trend line, the total amount of capacity that has been procured from contractor, it is about 11,000 megawatts. And I think we only get the benefit now of 6,000 megawatts because the others are still at the various stages of the project life cycle. So the grid is not necessarily benefiting from those megawatts. And Mr. Nxumalo has indicated what we are getting now. And then there was a question with regards to the energy action plan that there's overemphasis on fixing Eskom, and that's a high-risk strategy. Maybe let me make the point. Of course, it is the case that when I give an update on a weekly basis, there will be a greater level of emphasis on the performance of the grid and the work that the team is doing at Eskom, and the team is the board executive, but in particular the work that Mr. Nxumalo is doing because he's on the generation side. It's just to lose sight of the fact that I do get to report also on the work that gets to be done in relation to, for an example, outcome number 2. I've made the point that there has been significant amount of liberalization on the generation side, and as a result of that, there's a significant amount of megawatts, a pipeline of projects, about 66 gigawatts that are at various stages of the project life cycle. Of course, not all of them are going to reach a financial close, but we continue to enable them. For an example, as part of the work that Minister Krisi has been doing on accelerating the EIAs, we know now that she has enabled about 15,000 megawatts of generation capacity. But it doesn't follow that 15,000 megawatts is on the grid. There are other elements that needs to come into play, and we know that the significant constraint to our ability to be able to add new generation capacity onto the grid has to do with the transmission. We also reported, we are reporting also on the issues around the rollout of rooftop solar. And I think the point that has been made consistent is that, of course, in part as a result of the incentives that the Minister of Finance has introduced, we have seen that there's been an additional installation over a period of a year. If you compare June last year and June this year, an additional 2,200 megawatts of rooftop solar interventions. And we did report that I think now we're sitting at about 4,000 megawatts or so as a result of these interventions. And then we did make the point with regards to outcome number 3 that DMRE will be going out on another cycle of bid window number 7 to be able to get additional megawatts. I've made the point about bid window number 6. 2,000 megawatts was not allocated when DMRE went out as a result of the constraint on the grid. And then outcome number 5, Minister Godhan does report on it, on the creation of the 3 companies, just undermining the vertical integration of Eskom. But we know that, like I said, the shortest route to addressing the intensity of load shedding sits with the degree to which we are able to improve the performance of the installed capacity at Eskom, what we call the EAF. The others, they take a lot of time. So I've made the point that the 66 gigawatts, I mean, it can resolve your problem, but we have to have transmission in place. Minister Krisi approved from an EIA point of view 15,000 megawatts. No, they must still go through other stages before they get to financial close, and construction must happen for us to be able to benefit from the grid. So that helps you over a longer period, a medium to long-term period, but in the immediate, the solution resides with us addressing the performance of the installed grid, and then over time, there's additional generation capacity. And just to repeat, I think we received another question here, just indicating that on the issues of where we are, we made 2 points. The first one, as Mr. Ngumala has indicated and also reiterated, was the spike in demand that it is out of the norm. An additional 1,500 demand on a Friday given the period we are in. So that's the first part. And then the second one was on the depletion of the reserves and the fact that we need to replenish those, and therefore you don't have the benefits of the total megawatts that you can draw from your reserves because you are pulling them back for you to be able to replenish them so that they are able to perform the function that they've been designed to perform. So that's the 2 primary reasons why we are at stage 6. And as I conclude, I did make the point that we're looking to replenish those emergency reserves, and of course we're confident that the other units will come on stream for us to be able to ensure that we're providing significant amount of relief. And I think what this occurrence has done is just for us to begin to appreciate over time whether this is an outlier, that when you get to such levels of intensity with regards to the heat, that you are likely going to have these spikes going into the future. So it's going to constitute a body of evidence that will build into our models of forecasting just for us to have an appreciation going into the future. But most certainly, the kind of spike that we have experienced, we did not anticipate. Like I said, and Eskom has communicated, we are confident that we should lessen this situation when we get to Monday, as the communication has indicated. I will again take the opportunity on Sunday just to come and give an update because of the nature of the situation, to give you an indication of where we are and not wait for next week. But thank you very much for everyone for attending. We want to give you the assurance that we're doing everything possible now in the immediate relief stage 6, go to lower stages, and ultimately go to significantly lower stages and deliver on our promise to ensure that we are able to eliminate load shedding. Thanks, Tsaga.
Thank you very much, Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, for this media briefing. As the Minister has indicated, we will have a media briefing on Sunday this week for an update I will take this opportunity to thank everyone for making it to this very short media briefing. Thank you very much, colleagues. We've come to the end of this briefing.